Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Pete, joined by the one, the only, the fantasy master Lothario himself, Gray Albright. How you doing, Gray?
Hey, what's going on, B-Don? Chilling, man. I actually, for my birthday, B-Don and I almost share a birthday. We almost share mothers too. No, we don't. For my birthday, I got one of these. I got a Whoop, which measures stress levels and my heart rate. Well, it measures the heart rate, I guess, and then off of the heart rate, it can tell me my stress levels. So when I was doing an NFBC draft, a 50-round draft champions, and when I skipped over Luis Angel Acuna for Brandon Lockbridge, and then he got traded for Louis Robert Jr., and Acuna suddenly has a playing time in Chicago. My Whoop I started buzzing, saying I was stressed out. So
you gotta calm down. You gotta breathe. You gotta give yourself a little Hoosiers chant, Gray. The national champions.
Oh my God! That is me being excited for the Hoosiers, not me having a hairball in my throat.
Or any kind of cardiac event. Gray is doing okay.
I definitely don't have a cardiac event. Welcome to my Whoop.
This is I feel like this is not the position that would happen for if it ever happened on the podcast. Gray.
Actually, if I do have a cardiac event, I am excited for the moment my Whoop starts buzzing and going crazy, and all I can be is like, oh great, thank you for notifying I am dying. I appreciate it, Whoop.
You know, on the other hand, Gray, if you just started like naming catchers from like 30 on, maybe that would calm you down because the numbers are just so boring that you know the heart rate would just naturally flatten out there just like the numbers do.
Yeah, my Whoop is vibrating from being too stressed out. So Austin Wells, Alejandro Kirk, J.T. Realmuto, Moises Ballesteros. Yeah, that's a good idea, B-Don. I will take it under advisement.
All right. Well, with that said, let's talk about the tight end or maybe the kicker of the fantasy baseball world, and that is of course catchers. Let's talk about how you'd go about drafting them in general, Gray. 1 versus 2 catcher leagues. How you go about it in a deeper or only league. Just kind of run us through your thoughts with how you draft catchers and how they kind of end up falling in your overall rankings when we get to that point.
I don't know if you heard that, but my Discord started beeping, and I got stressed out that it was being heard by our listening audience, and then my Whoop started buzzing because I got stressed out. I'm a little crazy right now. Okay, yeah. So with catchers, I look at scarce positions. I think the opposite, maybe, as most people look at them. So I look at positions of scarcity, as in a catcher as a position to punt versus one to actually draft high, because I feel like unless you're getting a season like Cal Raleigh's last year where he hit 60 homers, which is absurd, and we'll get to Cal Raleigh specifically in a moment, but if you're drafting most catchers, like if you're drafting the third best catcher, say, I don't know, whoever the third best catcher was last year, say Shea Langeliers, and you're getting like a 25 homer season from him, and versus like drafting, I don't know, the 25th best catcher and Hunter Goodman and getting the 25 homer season from him, it's like there's no difference between whether or not you're drafting the third catcher or the 25th catcher. There's so little difference. Depending on, it's just like, it really depends on how you draft more than I think drafting the top guy with like, if you're drafting the top guy and expecting, if you're guaranteed a 60 homer season, then by all means, I mean, of course you would draft that. But there's really, I mean, it's so ludicrous to expect a repeat from Cal Raleigh. So more than likely, I mean, I think when position scarcity was really was brought to what should we call it, was first conceived. It was, Mike Piazza was hitting 40 plus homers and 340, and the third best guy was like Jason Kendall, and 8 homers and stealing 20 bags or something. Like, it was like there was such a huge difference between the top guy and the next guys that it made sense in a way to draft like a Mike Piazza back then. But now there's a good like 12 to 15 catchers that are just totally fine. I mean, they're not like amazing. They're not going to hit like, Cal Raleigh's 60 homers last year. Like, that's not going to happen. But the difference between, the second best catcher and the 12th best catcher is really like, I mean, it's probably nil or it's negligible at best. I think the biggest issue is really because like they have so few at bats. So you got like, you have a smaller sample size. That's what she said. And it's like you have 390 to 420 at bats from most catchers. And most catchers are going to hit like, 22 homers and have 65 to 70 RBIs, 55 to 60 runs, hit 260-ish. There's so many of those guys that the difference between them is so negligible. It's like, why bother drafting one high unless for sure it's going to be like a Cal Raleigh 60 homer season, which I really don't think will ever happen again. Not only will it not happen this year, I would put money on that Cal Raleigh is not going to do it again. But I would also say, I don't know if we're ever going to see in our lifetimes. I mean, that was such an absurd year. A switch hitting catcher hitting 60. I mean, he hit more homers in a season than Mickey Mantle ever. I mean, it's ludicrous. I mean, it's really insane. So, I think the difference between most catchers is so little that it doesn't really make sense to draft one high versus another one later, because at the end of the day, looking back in hindsight, I drafted Hunter Goodman in a bunch of leagues, and I drafted him at like, either 300 overall, or in some leagues, like in a 12-team mixed league, I just picked him up off of waivers. I mean, he was totally free, and I believe he was the second or third best catcher last year. So, yeah, it doesn't make sense to draft catchers high.
Yeah, and to some extent, it feels like catcher kind of like starting pitcher, where you say you can kind of just do K to walk ratio, and that's going to give you a pretty good idea. Like, catcher feels like if you just go by plate appearances, that's going to give you a pretty good idea of who's worthwhile, just because of the number of times they're going to come up and have a chance to do something for your team. And also, if they're getting a lot of plate appearances, they tend to be on the better side of the hitting catchers, because there's a lot of catchers that don't fit that, and they sit down on the bench on their days off.
Totally. Yeah. Like I think at some point in the catcher rankings, I even mentioned this, that like, if you take one catcher who hits like 15 homers and 250, which is a lot of second catchers, like we'll call that the like Tyler Stevenson stat line, 15 homers and 250. If you have a catcher who does that and gets 75 runs and 80 RBIs because he gets everyday at bats, that's going to be like a top 7 catcher, even with 15 homers and hitting 250. If he gets that many runs and RBIs, because so few catchers actually get a lot of at bats, that it's like if a guy does get that many of at bats, he's going to be valuable just on the runs and RBIs alone. So like a Tyler Stevenson, if he were to get every day at bats and get, 75 runs and 85 RBIs, he's a top 7 catcher. And if someone else, I don't know, say Dylan Dingler, say he gets 15 homers and hits 250, and he only gets 50 runs and 60 RBIs, he's going to be barely like a top 20 catcher. So it's like, it's kind of like, it's just like at bats matter so much.
They do. It's kind of what this position specifically comes down to. And, in a daily league, you can kind of piece it together. You can swap guys in and out if, they're on the bench. But in weekly leagues, there is an advantage to having at least an everyday type of catcher, but it's not one that you or I feel like is worth it at the top because, as you mentioned, the numbers just don't really shake out to what you can usually get from that point in the draft. Catcher is a really hard position in general. So there's a lot of time that they don't get to spend hitting that a lot of other positions do because they're working with the pitchers. It's also a very taxing position, which is why you don't see catchers back-to-back seasons as much as you do with other positions. There's just a lot that goes into being a good offensive catcher. Let's start with the first one. And this guy, he's sitting here by himself as he belongs after last season. In the first year, Cal Raleigh, last year, 159 games, 60 home runs, 14 stolen bases, 110 runs, 125 RBIs. He hit 247, 359, 589. You have him projected for 42 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 84, 103, and hitting 234. What are your thoughts on Cal Raleigh, who is currently going off the board as a top 20 player, just inside the top 20, basically?
Yeah, I actually, listening to you say my projections back to me, I almost feel like I'm being too optimistic, even with those projections. And that's, 42 homers. That's like, it's 18 homers off of what he did last year. And I still feel like that might be too optimistic. I mean, looking at his career home runs per year, 27 homers, 30 homers, 34 homers, 60 homers. No. Does one number stick out at all? I wonder. Also, like we were saying before with at-bats, plate appearances, I mean, he had 705 plate appearances last year. That's ludicrous, man. I mean, that's so insane. That's kind of like what I was saying with Juan Soto in our top 20 podcast, whereas like at a certain point in, August, it became obvious that Cal Raleigh was having a dream season and they wanted to, at some point they wanted to maximize it for, historical purposes. He wanted to maximize it, I'm sure. And he was like, and then they were also, because he was swinging such a hot bat, they kept him in the lineup as a DH at times, maybe catching more games than he would normally in those final, say the final 60 games, he was having a dream season. So you have a situation where it sort of perpetuates itself, where it's like, okay, he's got so many homers already. Let's get him at bats and see if he can get this historic season. Like I was saying with Juan Soto, where in September he was really going for it for a 40-40 season and stealing more bags. I believe Cal Raleigh was probably doing the same thing in the second half of the season, where and the Mariners as well, where they were like, okay, let's get you on the field, get you the at bats, maybe even at times like let's put you in a situation where you can succeed. And since he kept succeeding, it made sense. Like it wasn't like, oh God, like why are we're wearing this guy out and he's becoming a liability. Like that was never the case. Like it was more like, yeah, let's get him as many at bats as we can, even at a certain point hitting second in the lineup. So yeah, I mean that sort of perpetuates itself, where I think, it's something that, when a guy is having a career year like that, and we've seen it before, we saw it with Judge when he hit, the 60 plus homers that year. What was it, 2024? So it's like it becomes like a thing where it's like it perpetuates itself, and he's not really, even if he were to get in even if he were to have a great year next year, say, and be it like, in September, be sitting at like 35 homers to start of September, which is an amazing year. That would already have him as the second best homer year. If he's got 35 homers on September 1st, he's still going to get rested in September because he's nowhere near that insane year. Like, he only played the final week of the season because he was having that insane year. He only was getting those extra at bats in September because he was having that insane year. So it's like, you take away an insane year and just give him a normal solid year of him hitting, 35 to 40 homers, and that'll take off 50 at bats immediately. And so that removes runs and RBIs and the homers that come with those 50 at bats. So, I'm just saying, like, without having an insane year again, which I don't think is remotely possible, it's gonna hurt his numbers just from the sheer reason of him just being normal. Just for having just a normal year, it's gonna hurt him. And then also on top of that, like, you look at his splits, his batting average went down to 229 in the second half. So he came back to earth. And 229, if he just hit 229 in the second half and it just happened to be an outlier in his career numbers, it would be nothing, and I wouldn't even point to it. But the fact that the year before he hit 220 on the season in 153 games, in 546 at bats, he hit 220. So it's like, is he a 225 hitter really? Because he is suddenly, if he's a 35 to 40 homer, 225 hitter, or 230 even, if he is a 40 homer hitter with a 230 average, that is fantastic from a catcher. It is not a top 20 year by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a top 40. It's going to have, it'll be probably at the, if he does say 40 homers, say realistically 85 runs, 100 RBIs, 235 season, it's around a top 50 year, which is totally respectable. I mean, that's a great catcher year, but it's nowhere near where he's going in drafts. He's being overdrafted, and I wouldn't draft him anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. And in any kind of format where he's going to go, and I mean, if he's going to go in the top 2 rounds, which again, he had the season that says he can do it, so I understand. But again, there's a lot of things going against catchers. Salvador Perez had his, 48 home run season, followed that up with a 23 home run season. Everybody drafted him like first round that year, second round. And it's just really hard for catchers in particular to do that back to back. As you mentioned, the second half numbers fell back to kind of where we've traditionally seen him. Home run to fly ball fell off from, the historic first half pace that he was on. All of that to say it's probably not going to be 60 homers again. 14 stolen bases was also out of nowhere. The highest he's ever had was 6. So there was a little bit of an anomaly going on all over the place. He was top 50 in hard hit rate, barrel, average exit velocity, whatever you want to throw. He was 5th in WRC+, 7th in WOBA, 5th in OPS, 2nd in ISO. So obviously when he hit 60 home runs, all those numbers are going to look great. He did have the highest launch angle and the highest fly ball rate of his career, along with the best strikeout rate and the best walk rate. But when the launch angle goes up, which is also what happened with Salvador Perez's home run season, it tends to keep going up, which, the home runs, at some point, there's the peak launch angle. And obviously, first half, he found that. Can he get back to that, or is it just going to keep climbing? That's always a concern when somebody's launch angle climbs from season to season as well. Moving on to the next tier, number 2, Shea Langeliers. Last year in 123 games, he had 31 home runs, 7 stolen bases, 73 runs, 72 RBIs. He hit 277, 325, 536. Young projected for 33 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 78, 84, and hitting 257. Most of the numbers were pretty much in line with the previous year in regards to batted ball. Some went up slightly and improved, but Shea Langeliers looked good last year, Gray.
Yeah, no, completely. I think, for draft price versus value, I wouldn't draft Shea Langeliers just because I don't believe in drafting a catcher high. But if I were the type to draft a catcher high, I would go Shea Langeliers before I went Cal Raleigh. I actually really like Shea Langeliers. I wish I wish he were going a little bit later in drafts. Right? This is a two catcher leagues ADP that I'm quoting. So take it with a grain of salt, but he's going around 55 overall in NFBC. So. And Cal Raleigh is going at 18 overall. So I would go Shea Langeliers for sure. If I, between the two of them, I wouldn't get either of them, honestly, though, because I just wouldn't draft them that high. But I would prefer Langeliers. I think if anything, Langeliers is going up, and Raleigh is going to come down, and they're going to sort of meet in the middle somewhere. I think Sacramento, Sacktown, Bing Bong Stadium, I think is going to be, as good as it was last year. It should play that well again for Langeliers in only 523 plate appearances and only 481 at bats. He hit 31 homers. He's right at his power peak for his career. I wouldn't be shocked to see a 40 homer season from Shea Langeliers. I don't know. I mean, it probably won't happen, but it wouldn't shock me either. He looks like if you're the type to draft a catcher high, he looks kind of like a bargain where he's going versus Cal Raleigh. I think also I like the Shea Langeliers' strikeouts came down a lot. So he hit 277 off of a 19.7 strikeout rate. That was down from a 27.2%. So, strikeouts are way down. Batting out he's hitting the ball hard. The BABIP was, it wasn't like he was necessarily lucky. It's kind of the BABIP looks kind of neutral. So 260 it feels like realistic at worst. It's like he could potentially be the top catcher. It wouldn't shock me at all. The obvious top catcher is the guy who just hit 60 homers. So it's hard to argue with the guy who just hit 60 homers. But Langeliers hitting 35 homers and 260, and there's no reason to platoon him. I mean, he's going to be in the lineup most days. It's as many days as a catcher gets. And then also, you throw in the fact that if Brent Rooker goes to the outfield or if whatever happens, if there's a DH at bats, Shea Langeliers could get those too. So, yeah, I like Shea Langeliers a lot. I won't necessarily draft him, but I do like him. I think there is real upside here.
Yeah, the strikeout rate and swinging strike rate improvement was, as you mentioned, drastic. So that really shows, signs that the average wasn't just the ballpark, but also something in his profile has changed. Like I said, the batted ball really didn't change that much. Ground ball, fly ball, hard hit, average exit velocity, all that's pretty much in line with what he's done. Just had a better eye, put a few more balls in play, didn't strike out as much, and that helps. And then also the ballpark helps as well. So, yeah, I like Shea Langeliers as well. The games played may be a little low. So that's pretty much the only possible concern really at this point that I would have with him. Other than that, everything seems pretty good there. Let's move on to number 3 here, Gray. Ivan Herrera, last year in 107 games, had 19 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 54 runs, 66 RBIs. He hit 284, 373, 464. You're projected for 24 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 77, 83, and a 281 average. He improved in a number of places in his second season, lower strikeout rate, better home run to fly ball, better hard hit, average exit velocity, contact rate, swinging strike. A lot of good things from, who's a catcher we thought could do we could see some improvement from, and showed it.
Yeah, I also, I think it's fair to point out that he only played, looks like 13 games. So I think that's Yahoo only for catcher. He should get catcher eligibility at some point during the season, depending on what your league needs him to do in season. But they do, the Cardinals do have like 17 catchers. So they got rid of one of them. They shipped him off to Boston, but they still do have Pages, Crooks, Herrera. So yeah, but I think Herrera should get some time behind the plate. I would assume, maybe not, every day. He will take about, I would say, 6 weeks to get catcher eligibility in most leagues. I would guess at least. And then beyond that, like you mentioned, everything else looks great. Power is blooming. 25 years old, at 25 years old last year, 19 homers. That was up from 5 homers the year before in half a season. He's always had incredible contact, good strikeout rates, walks a decent amount, 373 on base percentage. He looks like as close as you're going to get to a Wilson Contreras 3-hitter, second or 2-hole or 3-hole hitter who's got, like you say, great batted ball profile. Like Ivan Herrera looks like he looks like he could be just a solid, excellent number 3 hitter. That isn't necessarily, it's not like for fantasy necessarily. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think the speed, like he had 8 steals last year, and guys can steal. we know with Josh Naylor, anything's possible when it comes to steals, but I wouldn't count on steals necessarily with Ivan Herrera. But if you get 5 steals, that's good. I would say 10 steals would be, ideal if he can do that with 25 homers. You're looking at a near perfect line for a catcher. Will he be? I don't see the insane. Like he could be like before Cal Raleigh put up the 60 homer season and made the new benchmark for catchers. When William Contreras was putting up 20 homer, 5 steal, 275 seasons and being the top catcher, like Ivan Herrera could have been the top catcher in that company. I don't know in the current how the current field sits. I would not expect Ivan Herrera to be the best catcher in baseball, but it's possible. He does have a great batted ball profile. I think he's probably, I would say he's going to be going in catcher where he's eligible for catcher. I would assume he's going to be going at a decent enough spot where I wouldn't be shocked if like he goes as late as, maybe 75 to 100 overall, which is good. Not a place where I would necessarily draft a catcher. I usually, in 2 catcher leagues, I wait until about 150 overall for my first catcher. And then I just take a flyer on any catcher with the starting job for my second catcher. And then in one catcher leagues, I wait until about 200 overall. So I'm not drafting Ivan Herrera necessarily, but he's got as good a, he looks a lot like William Contreras with the excellent, middle of the lineup type batted ball profile where he can go 20 to 25 homers, 275 average, 5 to 10 steals. Like he's got everything he's got everything there. I guess my thing is I don't see the insane upside like, with Langeliers has Sacktown, which could help boost him to I could see Langeliers coming in with like a 45 homer season, and Cal Raleigh just had a 60 homer season. So obviously that upside's there, but Ivan Herrera, I don't see huge upside, but I see an excellent hitter.
Yeah, I think if he kind of follows suit, honestly, with both those guys and gets a little more launch into his swing, he hits the ball plenty hard. I think he actually hits the ball harder than Langeliers if you're just looking kind of average exit velocity hard hit numbers. But he's it's a little flat. He doesn't have quite the fly ball numbers that he would need to jump into that. But I do think that that's an adjustment he could make still early in his career. As you mentioned, he should be playing DH. We're not sure when he's going to get catcher eligibility. If he doesn't have catcher eligibility to start the season, Gray, where would you feel comfortable drafting him? Let's say in like a 12-team, 5-man bench, 7-man bench type of league. Would you draft him, or would you just wait and let somebody drop him before he gets eligibility?
Right. Okay. So I'll say this for him. So his numbers, like the 20 to 25 homer, well, say 25 homers, 270, handful of steals. To me, that sounds like Alex Bregman, who is going roughly around 90 overall. 90 overall, that's with third base eligibility. Knock a round or two off for Herrera. So maybe 120 overall, 110, 120 overall, possibly.
Okay, I think I would go probably more in the I think like the 150 range, like we always kind of discuss, is where an area we would look to grab a catcher. I think that's more where I would look, just because I'm still not sure even a DH only, he's going to get full-time playing time. I know that they don't really have anybody else that should be there, but it's also the Cardinals who kind of galaxy brain their way to cutting playing time from guys like Herrera randomly, and then also there's going to be a random guy from the St. Louis Cardinals that's going to have a pretty solid season that's going to need time here or there. So I think I would drop him a little bit from where you're saying, but that feels like the right area, just based off of, again, the kind of the numbers you're going to get. I just think they're going to be lower than, like, even if his home run and his average are there, the runs and RBIs aren't going to be there necessarily with those numbers.
You don't believe in Mason Wynn as a 9-hole hitter? I mean, wait, no, excuse me, Victor Scott II, and then
who in this whole lineup is hitting him in? I mean, we'll get to the Cardinals lineup.
I think the Cardinals, honestly, like, there's bad teams out there, but the Cardinals are sort of under the radar for how bad they are. I know this is the catchers podcast, and we'll get back to the catchers in a second, but the Cardinals have 0 pitching. I mean, they're pitching awful, and their hitting isn't much better. They have, pound for pound, the Cardinals have an awful team. But anyway.
It is going to be I hope it's just an embarrassingly awful season for them, quite honestly, as a Cubs fan.
That's a 110 loss team is the lineup I'm looking at. It's a bad lineup, man. Oh, I forgot.
It is, and it's not the great division to be, sporting that lineup in either. So we'll get to that. We'll get to all that though. Moving on to number 4, who was the number 1 catcher consensus last year, William Contreras, 150 games last year, 17 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 89, 76. He hit 260, 355, 399. You're projected for 20 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 93, 87, 271. Again, this was not too long ago that he was, and by not too long ago, I mean last year, the number 1 catcher after going 23, 9, and 281, Gray. It's really rare you get a 60 home run season. Even a 30 home run season is pretty crazy out of catchers, especially if it comes with a decent average. William Contreras still seems like a very safe bet, Gray.
Yeah, no, completely. Actually, when you were saying all that, I was looking at the player rater for what he did last year, and it was he was the 75th best player on the player rater. So, not bad. not bad.
In a bad year. for him.
Yeah, not a terrible year, all things considered. He was the fourth best catcher. He was noticeably behind. It was Cal Raleigh, Hunter Goodman, Shea Langeliers, then William Contreras. Pretty solidly behind Langeliers as the fourth catcher. Langeliers had a good $4 in value on him. Anyway, he is, incredibly durable. I don't know how he stays on the field so much. He's really like, I feel like at some point he's going to break down, and that's going to be the end of that. But then again, Salvador Perez stays really healthy for a number of years. So yeah, I mean, a lot of Contreras' value is tied up in him getting, 550 plus at bats and 150-ish games played. So, like I was saying early on in this podcast, whereas like as long as Contreras gets, the 80 to 95 runs and 80 to 95 RBIs, it's hard to argue with his numbers. I mean, he's going to be a top 100 overall player and a top 5 catcher easily if he's getting those sort of numbers. If he has a little bit of a bounce back on his average, which I could see happening. I mean, last year his BABIP was a little bit low, and his hard hit was down from the previous year, but not awful. I could see a bounce back on average. And he also has, power, a little bit of power and a little bit of speed. So if he has like a little bit of a lucky year with homers and hits, 25 homers and steals 10 bags, all well within the range of what he could do, and hits 280 in 150 games, that's close to probably a number 1 overall catcher year, depending on, Cal Raleigh hitting 60 badunkadunks again.
Yep, I completely agree. And, if he falls or maybe in an auction, I could see myself potentially taking a look at him if he goes at the right price. If everybody's just kind of bored of him putting up his consistent numbers, because if you have to tell me one catcher is going to finish top 100, my money would probably go on William Contreras, because power hitters have a way of just kind of bottoming out season to season at times. Again, especially a catcher. Contreras is just so steady in what he does. Even in a down year, would have broken or did break the top 100 on the player rater. His K rate has improved every single season. Walk rate up a little bit as well. Best line drive rate of his career. Worst home run the fly ball, despite the launch angle actually being up, which is all kind of a little bit weird there. Best contact rate, best swing and strike rate. He's typically a 330 to 348 BABIP guy the last few seasons. It was down to 299. So if that just normalizes, he's back to his normal kind of 280 hitting self. Agustin Ramirez comes in number 5, 136 games last year, 21 home runs, 16 stolen bases, 72, 67. His average was 231, OB 287, and slugging was 413. Year projected for 26 home runs, 15 stolen bases, 80-84, and hitting a 244 average. What are your thoughts on the young Agustin Ramirez?
I had my big thought on him was, as I mentioned in the catcher's write-up, was how I really I love Agustin Ramirez for fantasy, and I found it slightly hilarious that Drake Baldwin was the actual rookie of the year, and Ramirez I think is just for fantasy is much more interesting than Drake Baldwin. I don't have a ton else to say on Agustin Ramirez other than he's in a terrible lineup, but that could be a good thing because they don't really have anyone else for as far as DH goes. I don't see them necessarily. They could, I guess. Owen Casey could, I guess, move to DH possibly, and then maybe Christopher Morel, but. Agustin Ramirez is, I think, his biggest, pitfall or downfall is his terrible glove. He's not a great catcher, which is fine because I think his bat plays at DH anyway, and he'll get catcher at bats. I don't think they're going to just bench him just because he can't catch. So he should get a decent number of catcher at bats, and he's also going to get DH at bats, I'm assuming. So he could potentially, I mean, in his rookie year alone, he had 537 at bats. He could sneak in there with considering the DH at bats, he could sneak in there with like, a top 1 or 2 catcher at bat type year. And that's talking like there's guys that we've talked about so far who are getting a lot of at bats. It's not like right now catchers seem to be getting more at bats than in not that far in the past. So Agustin Ramirez, he gets 550 at bats, which I mean that's not nothing. It feels like kind of realistic, if not even maybe pessimistic. So he gets 550 at bats. You're looking at 25 homers, 15 steals. The average will be around, maybe 240-ish, 245. It's not bad. I like Agustin Ramirez. It'll depend on where he goes in drafts, on whether or not I draft him. As far as 2 catcher leagues, he's going way before I would take him. Unfortunately, I would love to have him, but he's not going to be there. He's not going to be there at 150 overall, where I was saying that I wanted to draft him. He's going at 76 overall. So yeah, he's a good 70 spots ahead of where I would even look at him. But with all that said, if he falls, I would happily draft him. I think he's great for fantasy. I think for real baseball, he's probably not as good because he can't really catch, which is kind of a drawback for a catcher. But I like him though. I like him a lot for fantasy.
Yeah, I like for him for fantasy as well. The power speed combo is very rare for catcher. I mean, you're looking at probably the only guy I would think go 2020 at the catcher position this following season. So, I mean, it's always nice to get some contribution in stolen bases from an unexpected place. And that, again, as we talk about with any position, speed kind of buoys value, even if their average kind of bottoms out, which happens with just about every catcher at some point in the season, or if he is just a 20 home run hitter and it doesn't really develop from there. It gives you 15 to 20 stolen bases on top of that, gives you a good strikeout rate at least, which keeps at least a little bit of the average bottoming out from happening. Hopefully that all helps. And really the only difference between him getting to 550 at bats last season was him getting called up at the end of April instead of getting called up or starting the season. And 550 would have put him as the 4th catcher in the majors and at bats. So yeah, I could definitely see the case for Agustin Ramirez taking a jump, or even just getting more plate appearances and becoming the number 1, number 2 catcher, even possibly. Moving on to number 6, Drake Baldwin. Last year had 19 home runs, 56 runs, 80 RBIs, hit 274, 341, 469. You have projected for 24 home runs, 1 stolen base, 69, 85, and a 277 average. What do you think about Drake Baldwin, who everybody loved last season and at least finished the season with promise?
Yeah, if there was a way to MGM bet or Polymarket or whatever these betting platforms are now, or FanDuel, whatever it was, if there was a way to bet that a top 10 catcher who was the rookie of the year was to disappoint in his sophomore season, if that was an actual bet, I would make that bet because I don't really trust Drake Baldwin at all. I think he did have a good season. I think it was just, I don't know. It feels like the upper part of his game was just like, I don't know. It feels like there's a real low ceiling for everything. He has no speed. He does make good contact, He hit 274 with a 289 BABIP. So and that BABIP is, more or less in line with where he's going to be, maybe a little bit low even. So, maybe he can hit 280, but I feel like the power is going to come down. I don't trust Drake Baldwin at all. Sean Murphy being back, I don't know. I know Drake Baldwin is, he's the future and Sean Murphy is not, obviously, for the Braves. So I know that they're going to want Drake Baldwin to get the at-bats. Like, I understand that. I'm not crazy. But the fact that if Sean Murphy is back and healthy and takes away even 150 at-bats, I mean, it's not like Sean Murphy they're just going to plant him on the bench and he's going to get 0 at-bats. I mean, they are going to play him at least once a week, if not more. And then I don't know. I don't trust Drake Baldwin. We're still not in a place where in catchers rankings where I'm drafting anyone. So it goes without saying for me to say I'm not drafting him, because I'm not, but I don't really trust him either. I mean, he could have maybe a little bit of upside. I don't know. I get a vibe like he could have DH at bats if something, if Jerickson Profar has tainted urine again, or something happens with the DH spot that frees up at bats maybe for Baldwin. But yeah, I don't know, man. I'm concerned about Drake Baldwin. If I were the type to be drafting a catcher in the top 100 where he's going, I wouldn't be drafting Drake Baldwin. I would, as I mentioned, I like Augustin Ramirez. I like Shea Langeliers. I don't like Drake Baldwin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind him. I understand what you're saying in regards to Sean Murphy and the playing time. Also, Sean Murphy hopefully can't be as bad as he was in the second half last year, but maybe he can be, because it was really horrendous for a few months there with Sean Murphy. So I could see them just outrighting Sean Murphy at some point if he continues to do that. I will say, in regards to the overall stat line, he had a better season in his first year in the majors than he ever did in the minors. That seems out of place. That seems, not something that normally happens. So that's either a really good sign and he's adjusted really well, or there's something that's going to come back down to earth a little bit. He does have really good plate discipline, which helps to limit that to some extent. But I'm with you in that I don't know if there's a huge power breakout coming. Again, he hits a lot of ground balls, low launch angle. So if that can improve, maybe, but that's kind of a hope and see with as low as his launch angle is compared to, kind of where it kind of needs to be. At number 7, Will Smith, 110 games last year, 17 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 64, 61. He hit 296, 404, and 497. The over projected for 20 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 74, 77, and a 268 average. Only 110 games last year. He's usually around the 130. In that case, he probably gives you exactly what you projected him for last year. I mean, this is, again, just a very consistent guy. I know he's getting up there in age a little bit, but still feels pretty safe.
Yeah, no, I think so. He's like, I feel like he's probably the most boring guy that we've discussed so far, because, he is getting up there in age a little bit. He's like, 19 homers in 2023. Then he followed that up with 20 homers. Last year it was 17 homers. This year, I think he's probably, his projections are basically 20 to 23 homers. Doesn't feel like there's any upside here. Doesn't feel like there's a ton of downside either, assuming he's healthy, because the Dodgers are basically the NL All-Stars, so their lineup is going to be good. Will Smith, at this point, Will Smith might be their 9-hole hitter with how many bats they have in their lineup. I think he's probably, all kidding aside, I think he's probably middle of the lineup, fifth or sixth hitter in the Dodgers lineup is, basically 90 runs and 110 RBIs if he were to play 150 games. So I don't think there's going to be any real, maybe it depends where Teoscar hits in the lineup. So maybe Will Smith will hit as low as 7th potentially in front of like Edman and Pages. But yeah, I mean, even 7th, even in the Dodger lineup is as good as like, hitting 3rd in the Cardinals lineup. So yeah, I think Will Smith is fine. He's just kind of boring. There's not a ton there as far as, upside. I don't think there's really much there as far as, it's not like he's got 5 categories locked down. He doesn't have any speed really. His average seemed to be dropping. And then last year he had it looks like somewhat of a lucky year for Babbitt. So he hit 296. So he's probably more like a 260, 265 hitter, which is fine. I mean, 20 homers, 265, 2 steals, whatever. It's fine. I mean, it's nothing great, but it's, if it comes with 130 games played, it's probably going to come with, 80 runs and 80 RBIs because the lineup's so good. So, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I don't expect the average to hang around from last year, but to his credit, he did actually increase his bat speed a little bit. That helped his hard hit barrel, the average exit velocity, line drive, home run, fly ball, zone rate. All those numbers were up last year, along with the improved bat speed. So that's nice to see, at least if you're thinking, is this the year that he's going to fall off? The bat speed was actually up last year, so that's a little bit promising in that he's not going to fall off. But again, 20 home runs, 255 seems pretty much what you're getting here, and maybe you get a little bit of average like he did last year, but like you said, there's not a lot of upside here. Let's move on to number 8, Ben Rice. Last year in 138 games, he had 26 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 74, 65. He hit 255, 337, 499. You're projected for 22 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 69, 74, and a 242 average. Catcher eligible and should play first base every day, hitting in the middle of the lineup. Ben Rice is going, I think, as like the number 2 catcher in most drafts. You have him down here, Gray. Why so down on the Rice?
I think
don't like Uncle Ben's. Or a San Francisco treat guy.
Be careful about how derogatory I am about Rice because I am speaking to an Asian man. I like Ben Rice. I think he's just being like, there's something about a catcher eligible player who's playing another position that gets like fantasy baseball people like out of their minds. They get so crazy with that. That really jazzes them up. It's like, oh my God, he's going to get everyday at bats because of, first base, and he's got catcher eligibility. So that's going to lead to, buku runs and RBIs, which, I mean, it could, but I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make sense. First of all, it doesn't make sense that he'd be playing against lefties. That doesn't really track. I understand Aaron Boone is a little bit of a, not the smartest, not the sharpest tool in the shed. So there could be potential, I guess, for him to get everyday at bats. But, right now they got Cody Bellinger in left field, Jason Dominguez on the bench. I mean, maybe Dominguez just gets traded, but just to sit Dominguez on the bench for the entire season and not have him play the outfield at all is crazy. That's crazy. Now they have also Giancarlo Stanton currently as DH. And, even though you would hope someone could DH without getting hurt. Okay, so Giancarlo will get hurt, obviously. But still, things happen. Lineups change as the season goes on. Even for someone like Aaron Boone, I really don't think Ben Rice is just going to be out there every single day. Like, I feel like Bellinger's going to get starts at first. Dominguez is going to go into the outfield. and Ben Rice is going to go on the bench against lefties, at least against lefties. I mean, he hit 208 against lefties last year in 106 at bats. It wasn't, I just don't believe in him as a everyday player, even though, I know like it's like Aaron Boone has said that Rice will play every day and he'll play against lefties. And, roster resource at Fangraphs, everyone looks at that as like the holy grail for playing time. And I get it. I see it all. I just don't really believe Ben Rice is going to be an everyday player. I mean, it doesn't really make sense. He'll get more at bats probably than most catchers, and he'll be better. I mean, it's not like I have him ranked in a place where he's going to be, where he's not that low in my rankings, but I just don't, I have him right now at 7. I have him at 8th out of catchers, and he was the 7th best catcher last year. That sounds about right. He was right below Salvador Perez and Wilson Contreras. Wilson Contreras had catcher eligibility last year. So yeah, I mean, that sounds right for Ben Rice. He was, he was last year around the 100th overall player, which is, I mean, that sounds about right for Ben Rice. I don't see, insane upside for him. He's fine for a 22 homer, couple steals, 255 hitter who will get, maybe roughly 470 at bats, maybe, that's fine.
Yeah. And somebody is going to look at the splits and say, oh, well, he hit 283 as a first baseman, only 221 as a catcher, Gray. Like that's very limited sample. Also, he hit like the same amount of home runs in half the games at catcher. So that's ridiculous. That's nothing really. If he plays 160 games, then absolutely he could take a jump just in the counting numbers alone. But I don't think either of us think that's necessarily happening. You have projected it looks for 454 at bats. I would say that feels maybe a touch low, but not much. I mean, 480 maybe, like 30. So negligible amount really that we're talking about difference here.
Yeah. I mean, he's fine. I don't see the huge upside necessarily. And I really think they should bench him versus lefties, especially if Dominguez is on the bench. Like, that doesn't make any sense, having Dominguez on the bench and Rice playing every day. Why? Just move Bellinger to first and put Dominguez in the outfield. It's very easy.
It is. It seems like a very straightforward solution. I guess I don't know what they're thinking, quite honestly, but we'll wait and see how that plays out. I would assume that we're right, but you never know. You never know, Gray. Some things seem very obvious, and then we never see it actually come to fruition. Moving on to the next tier here, number 9, Yainer Diaz. Last year's catcher darling, 143 games last year, 20 home runs, 1 stolen base, 56 runs, 70 RBIs, 256, 284, 417. The over projected for 22 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 62, 70, and 264. The crazy thing is there was all this hype around him, Gray, and he pretty much did what he was supposed to. I don't know what was expected for him to really do more than what he did.
Yeah, I would say probably his average was a little bit lower than I think people expected, because he was coming off a 299 season and he hit 256. I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't have last year's projections in front of me, but I would guess people probably were expecting 275 or better. So a little bit lower maybe on average. But yeah, I agree. I mean, not a ton different. I think if anything, like right now, so at this point, we're in a new tier, and I would absolutely draft Yainer Diaz. And there's actually a possibility I could. Not a huge possibility. I mean, he is going before 150 overall, which is where I say I like to draft my first catcher in a 2-catcher league, that is. So at 150 overall, if he falls to that, I'll happily take Yannier Diaz. I think he's, if anything, looking at his numbers and depending on, counting stats, I mean, it's hard not to see him basically as Will Smith, just with, maybe a little bit fewer counting stats. So, I mean, but that counting stats are, very fickle. They can go either way. So I say Yannier Diaz or, another guy, if Yannier Diaz does gain back those losses in average and hits 280, his numbers really aren't that different than, William Contreras or Ivan Herrera, to talk about two guys who were going much earlier. So, yeah, I mean, I think Yannier Diaz is fine. If you're looking to, jump the gun a little bit and grab a first catcher in a 2-catcher league, and you're looking at possibly if you can get him at like 150 overall, absolutely, I would do it. If anything, I could see, potential upside depending on where he is in the Astros lineup and depending on how his batting average bounces back. So if he's at, right now, Yannier Diaz could be hitting as low as 7th in the lineup, or as, something happens to Carlos Correa, absolutely possible. Diaz could be hitting as high as cleanup. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely room for improvement from last year. And, a righty in what is it, Daikon Stadium? I think that's a radish. But wherever the Astros play now, I know it's not Crawford or Minute Maid anymore. It's Daikon? I don't know. Anyway, wherever Yannier is playing his home games, it's the stadium is conducive to his power. So yeah, I like Yannier Diaz as a little bit of a reach for your first catcher in a 2-catcher league. Otherwise, I think in a 1-catcher league, I think you're probably not going to be able to get Yannier Diaz after 200. But if you can, go for it.
Yeah, I feel like this is the tier of like fantasy baseball loves to go blind resume. If we put these numbers next to each other, who's who? Like, I feel like this is the tier of blind resume Gray. It's like Yannier Diaz could be Will Smith. He could be William Contreras. Like, it could definitely happen, and it's not even that big of a stretch. Up next at number 10 is Hunter Goodman. 144 games last year. He had 31 home runs, a stolen base, 73 runs, 91 RBI. He had 278, 323, and 520. Young projected for 24 home runs, 1 stolen base, 70, 77, and 248. What do you think about Hunter Goodman? Again, fantasy loves when a catcher plays other positions, but Hunter Goodman pretty much went back to catcher last year.
Yeah, no, totally. I think there's something interesting about the fact that Hunter Goodman was, I don't have his ADP from last year in front of me, but I want to guess it was like around past 300. I mean, I know I picked him up in our 12-team mixed league RCL. I picked up Hunter Goodman off a waiver. So he definitely wasn't drafted there. So it was after 275 at least, whatever his ADP was. And I believe I got him as a second catcher in my NL only Tau Wars league. I want to say, like, I never spend, or maybe I got him as my first catcher, but still I never spend really that much. So at most I spent like $7 to $10 on a catcher, which is like nothing for NL only, which is, basically $1 catcher in a mixed league. But now he's going, as high as 32 overall on in drafts. Like, what? Like, I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like there's a lot of recency bias in fantasy baseball that is just like, it's so crazy to me that, like, so I know, like, Hunter Goodman just did it. Obviously, he just had a top catcher year. He was the second. Was he second? Yeah, he was second best catcher on the player rater after Cal Raleigh. So he just did have, like, as good as year as you can expect. And I understand moving him up in drafts, but he didn't suddenly become a top 30 player. Like, that's crazy. I don't know, man. It just seems kind of crazy. Anyway, I don't mind him. Obviously, I don't think I'm drafting him this year because his ADP is way before this, but he seems fine. It could be a little bit of I'm a little bit once bitten, twice shy when it comes to any Rockies hitter who does well coming off of that season, like Nolan Jones and then Brenton Doyle. I'm a little bit gun shy when it comes to Rockies hitters who have done well, but yeah, I mean Hunter Goodman seems fine for taking me out of the equation. All his projections say he's a 28 homer, 250 hitter, which is fine. I mean, that's totally fine. And counting stats that go with that, depending on if he can get, 140 games played, which, I mean, it was his high last year, and maybe he can DH some this year. So maybe he can get there again. That feels a little bit high, but you never know, I guess. I have him, I took 50, 60 at bats off of his, line from last year when I did my projections, because I just don't see him repeating. That was a lot of at bats he got, considering he never had more than 211 in his career before that. Again, I mean, he hasn't played a ton of years, so there is that. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't see myself drafting Hunter Goodman, but he seems okay for a 27 homer, 255 type year.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that line. I don't have anything wrong with it, and there is a decent chance that he's going to be among at least the top 10 in plate appearances, if not a little bit higher than that, just because the Rockies are awful, and he should get some DH time as well as, time at catcher. It just it feels like everything he did last year was pretty much in line with what we saw in the small sample before. Home run to fly ball was right around the same. Strikeout rate was down a little bit. Walk rate was up a little bit. The hard hit was actually up. Average exit velocity was up. So everything seems in line with what we saw on the small sample, just across a larger sample. So, I don't see why he wouldn't put up, like you said, like 25 to 30 home runs, and maybe the average drops a little bit. 331 is a pretty high BABIP, but we also know he plays in Colorado for half his games, so that always helps. So I don't mind Hunter Goodman at all. He is going well before some of these guys we've talked about. So if you want him, you really can't be waiting around for 150 because somebody else is going to like him and draft him before this point. Number 11 is Samuel Basallo. 31 games last year in the majors. He had 4 home runs. He had 165, 229, 330. In 76 games in AAA, he had 23 home runs, 49, 67. He had 270, 377, and 589. Young projected for 26 home runs, a stolen base, 51, 62, and a 241 average. Should have at least playing time versus righties locked up, whether that's a DH or catcher, even though Adley's still there.
Yeah, he's also, I think there's an element of, he's got upside, quote unquote, whatever that means. Maybe there could be something here where we're getting, even better than what we could expect, which is, it's nice. I'd take upside if the price is right for his ADP, which, currently it is. He's going at 170 overall in ADP, as low as 234 in some leagues. So yeah, I would absolutely draft him. I like the flyer on upside, for sure. Definitely a catcher. Why not? With that said, outside of Gunnar Henderson, I don't know if the Orioles have really developed one bat. The Orioles they've ruined a lot of guys. I don't know, man. I'm starting to get worried. Dylan Beavers, it's all up to you, man. You have to pull away from Kobe Mayo. Westberg, Adelaide Rushman, Colton Cowser. I mean, there's a lot riding on you, Dylan Beavers. Yeah, I don't know. I could see Basalio. Like right now, Adelaide Rushman is the number one catcher for the Orioles, and Basalio is, I guess, DH with catcher. He'll get some catcher bats. But I'm going to see if I can hire a hypnotist to somehow get Adelaide Rushman out of the first catcher role and get Basalio in it, because Adelaide Rushman's been bad. Obviously, I haven't even ranked him yet, and he won't be ranked for a while. I don't like Adelaide Rushman at all for fantasy, and I would much prefer Basalio. And Basalio just hit higher in the lineup too, and hit every day. I mean, why not? Let's go, man. Yeah, I like the upside. I would take it on a catcher for sure. So I would go Basalio. Where he's going in drafts. Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's Basallo, but we're just gonna go with Basalio from here on out. Number 12, Salvador Perez. He had the former catcher leading home run in recent years. Last year, in 155 games, he had 30 home runs, 54 runs, 100 RBIs. He had 236, 284, 446. You have projected for 28 home runs, 52 runs, 87 RBIs, and a 231 average. I mean, most of the batted ball was pretty much in line with what he's been doing, Gray. Again, it could just fall off at some point, but it doesn't seem like it's happening quite yet. But again, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be shocked if he rebounds a lot in average. I mean, I have him projected for 231. He hit 236. He's currently he's going to be 36 years old in May. It feels like the beginning of the end for Salvador Perez. He does feel like the kind of guy who could just wake up and hit 27 to 30 homers and get a bunch of RBIs, because he gets a lot of at bats and he plays a lot. Talking about like a guy who plays a ton at catcher, his knees must be like seriously reinforced by metal. I don't know how he does it, but yeah, I mean, every year he gets 155 games, and a lot of them are catcher. So yeah, I like Salvador Perez if he's going at the right spot in drafts. I don't mind him. I think he's actually, as of early ADP, he's going before 100 overall. So that's before I'm drafting him. So there's no chance I'm getting him. But if he were to fall to where I have him ranked, sure. I have no problem with him. I just don't, realistically, it doesn't seem like he's going to be on any of my teams. But I don't mind him in theory with 27 to 30 homers, good RBIs, insanely terrible runs every year, and an average that seems like it's starting to fall.
Yeah, that'll happen when you're the slowest player in baseball, Gray. The runs are a little bit harder to come by if you're not trotting around the field. That's pretty much what he gets. He gets his home runs, and anybody who hits a home run behind him, he can score. That's essentially what his runs.
Has he ever scored on like a base hit?
Maybe from third on what would be a triple ball?
A gapper. A gapper to
not even a gapper, like one of those weird ones in like Boston that kicks off like two fences and then ends up in like the opposite field somehow.
A gapper to left center in Fenway that bounces all around the stadium like a pinball.
Some angels in the outfield stuff going on. The ball's just got to be moving everywhere.
Salvador Perez just barely makes it from third. So slow. Oh my God, he's so slow.
He's power walking, Gray. He's power walking.
Yeah.
Number 13, getting some youth back in here. Francisco Alvarez, Last year in 76 games, had 11 home runs, 32 runs, and 32 RBIs. He hit 256, 339, and 447. Young projected for 25 home runs, a stolen base, 58 runs, 73 RBIs, and hitting 243. He is still only 24 years old. Did have thumb surgery last year. What are your thoughts on Francisco Alvarez?
I like how it's at some point in December when I was projecting the catchers. I like how I was so crazy optimistic for Francisco. 25 homers. Okay. I mean, he did do it in 2023, I guess. So, I mean, I don't know. I will say with Francisco Alvarez, it seems like the one thing that's really holding him back is these fluky injuries that he's had the last 2 years. So, if he can stay on the field, and he's young and he's still young too, and the Mets lineup, well, I was gonna say is improved, but it's okay. It's not terrible. He could be okay. Francisco Alvarez, I think, could get some counting stats in that lineup if he stays on the field. Maybe 25 homers isn't the most ridiculous optimistic projection I've done, but yeah, I like Francisco Alvarez. As of right now, he's going at roughly, let's see, 180 overall in drafts. It's totally within the realm of possibility. I could draft him in a 2-catcher league, and if he falls to after 200, I'd happily take him in a 1-catcher league too. I like Francisco Alvarez. I think the power is real, and I think he could, possibly have a huge year potentially if he stays on the field. I think he's actually really good. One of the few bright spots for the Mets when it comes to hitting prospects that they've developed. Sorry, Jared Kalenic, Luis Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio, Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos. Well, you get the idea. Alvarez.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing that happens to their pitching prospects usually, but please don't. Let's please not have that happen. Yeah, it's interesting on Alvarez. This does feel like your most ceiling optimistic projection of the group so far, Gray.
Yeah.
I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. It just feels like you are projecting higher than you would normally do. But that's fine. You like Francisco Alvarez, and there's nothing wrong with that. He was second at catcher in hard hit rate and average exit velocity, behind only Ben Rice. So there is some reason to think that he could improve still if he can stay on the field. Number 14 is Kyle Teal. 78 games last year in the majors. He had 8 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 38, 35. He had 273, 375, and 411. In 50 games in AAA, he had 8 home runs, 7 stolen bases, and hit 295. Young projected for 15 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 69, 52, and a 281 average. I will say, compared to Francisco Alvarez, who was very impressive on the StatCast data, Kyle Teal is not great.
Yeah, that's fair. It is. It's hard to argue with that. I think the White Sox are a terrible team. So
organization, yeah.
Yeah, as an organization, they're terrible. They're terrible all around. But which helps actually. I think Kyle Teal could hit in the top 3 in the lineup. Last year he hit, as you mentioned, 273. I have him projected for 281. So I like the average tool. He did strike out a decent amount, but he also walked a lot. I could see if he hits 280 and in the top 3 in the lineup, even though it is, I think it's a better lineup than it was last year. But it depends on kind of what Colson Montgomery does, who's going to be either it would kind of make or break that lineup in a way. But if Kyle Teal hits second in front of Montgomery and Montgomery is hitting well and Teal then DHs some and Chiero Edgar Quiero, Taco Bell. Yo, Quiero. Edgar Quiero hits, he catches some days and Teal DHs, and, if they bounce off of each other potentially, and Teal gets the at-bats and has the average maintains the average like he did last year, because like you mentioned, in AAA he hit 295, then 273 in the majors. I mean, I know the BABIP's kind of high for him, but yeah, I mean, he does have speed. Unlike most catchers, he has some speed, and he does have a bit of power. So if I like the idea of the upside play for catcher, because it is such a weak position. If you're, as you move into like the second half of the rankings, if you're going for a guy who could potentially go, 15, 10, 280 with runs and RBIs, that's a top 12 catcher. So Kyle Teal, for me, that fits the bill. I don't see a huge power upside necessarily. I mean, I don't know if that's going to come. I don't know if the speed is really like that incredible, but if the speed is anywhere from 7 to 12 steals, that'll do it for catcher. That's something. I especially like it for upside in a 2-catcher league, because why not? A guy like Kyle Teal, who's going to he'll definitely be catching for the White Sox with potentially getting DH at bats. So he's going to get the at bats. There's no reason for them not to play him. So yeah, I like the upside play. I don't know if it's going to be that incredible of an upside play, but it's good enough for catcher, and his ADP is decent enough too, where he's going at roughly between 180 and 220 overall. So somewhere in that range, I have no problem for taking him as my first catcher in a 2-catcher league. But it depends on where he goes for a 1-catcher league. He's got to go after 200. Otherwise, I'm not going anywhere near him.
Yeah, I would agree with pretty much everything you said. I don't love Kyle Teal, I think, or I don't like him quite as much as you do. But where we're at in the catcher rankings, I can understand where you're saying you would take the shot on the upside, because we're getting to a point where we're starting to run out of that. And also the projections for the rest of the guys coming up are all going to be kind of in the same ballpark. You just kind of choose whether you want a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And when I say a little bit, I do mean a little bit. So I don't hate the upside call on Kyle Teal. I just don't necessarily think it's happening. But again, that's just kind of where you're at in the catcher position.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's a good way of expressing it, because it's like after Kyle Teal, as we go into the next tier of players, there's a lot of like, it's like I mentioned earlier with Tyler Stevenson. It's like you want 15 homer 250 season, or you want an 18 homer 230 season, or you want a 14 homer 260 season. It's all kind of like, who cares?
Yeah, just a home run here or there, or some points in average, and that's pretty much what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Let's start on the next tier here, Gray. Number 15. We'll try to move through these latter ones a little bit faster. Logan O'Hoppe, 119 games last year, 19 home runs, 35 stolen bases. Or sorry, that can't be right. 19 home runs, 213 average, 35-43 on the counting stats. You have him projected for 20 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 51-60, and a 231 average. Batted ball pretty much the same. Fly ball was up a little bit, but I mean, he also was another really, really horrendous second half.
Yeah, not a good enough first half to really make a difference.
No.
I don't mind him for it. Like he feels like a power play of if you want 20 homers potentially, and you can stand the hit on average. Last year, 35 runs and 43 RBIs feels like, I mean, that feels like there's almost comically low for a guy who played in 119 games. Like it almost feels unlucky. Like runs and RBIs are hard to account for, but 35 runs in 119 games almost feels comically like something was wrong there. Like even Sal Perez isn't that bad. So there was something up unlucky wise with his runs and RBIs. But with all that said, he's like we're saying with the Tyler Stevenson stuff, I think Logan O'Hoppe is like, if you want 20 homers and a 220 average, go for Logan O'Hoppe. And I think that's not a bad sort of flyer for a catcher because, average is fickle. So if you get lucky and you get 20 homers and a 250 average just by some crazy lucky chance, I mean, then he becomes like a top, 10 catcher.
Yeah, and to be fair to him, as bad as his second half was, his first 2 months, like he looked like potentially the number one catcher, or number two behind Cal Raleigh, because he was hitting like 260. He had 14 home runs after the first 2 months. And then he had the concussion and was terrible after that. So
I do think now that you reminded me, because I drafted him last year in our RCL and I dropped him like 3 games into the season for Hunter Goodman. And that worked out good for me. But there was a good 2 months there where I was like, oh, man, why did I drop Logan O'Hoppe?
Yeah, but you think like, oh, I shouldn't have dropped him. And then you see at the end of the season, you're like, oh, that was okay because he hit like 160 for the rest of the year after that. So it's fine.
Who's to say he's actually okay now, though?
That's fair. I mean, we've seen head injuries in any sport kind of ruin the rest of it, and whether that's something happened or just kind of a fear thing, they could both be a realistic issue here. Number 16, Adley Rutschman, how the mighty have fallen. 90 games last year, 9 runs, 37 runs, 29 RBIs. He had 220, 307, 366. You have projected for 14 home runs, a stolen base, 54, 59, and a 243 average. He did have an oblique issue last year, which is why the 90 games. But prospect catchers and Baltimore,
right?
Prospects, both.
Weeders, Adley Rutschman, stop. Basalo, hold on a second. Hold on.
We need to drop him now. In fairness, the good years happen early, Gray.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Get one good year out of them.
Get Orioles players early, and then don't draft them ever again.
Yeah. The first years are good. It's a second.
Do I need to move Gunnar Henderson? This is making me concerned talking about this over and over.
I know. Adley Rutschman, I don't have much to say other than I feel like if you gave him a 70 grade, 70 prospect grade, I feel like you have to explain yourself every time. You should have to do a caveat in front of every article you ever written in your life. I'm about to talk about Jesus made, but first I have to disclose to you that at one point I thought Adley Rutschman was a 70 grade prospect.
And he was really just 250 and 20.
He's so whatever, man. Especially for fantasy. He could bounce back this year for real baseball, and maybe he does bounce back to a 17 to 20 homer guy with a 250 average, which is fine for catcher, but he's got no speed. And even that line I just said, that's still barely, even if he were to bounce back all the way to that point, which, would be massive bounce back because he has really had an awful year last year. But if he were to bounce back to that, then he goes to, he's still barely a top 10 catcher. He's fine for real baseball. if he bounces back. But for fantasy, he's still kind of like, he's okay, whatever,
Yeah, and to be fair to prospects, at least for real baseball, he is good on the defensive side. But there's a lot of fantasy only prospect guys who also gave him very high grades. But what can you do? Sometimes you have to go with the information out there, and it's not always right. And maybe just don't rank Orioles prospects from moving forward. But yeah, I mean, Basalo's it great. If Basalo fails this year and everybody else just flops again, and we're done. I'm done. Dylan Beavers, if he flops, like if Basalo and Beavers both flop and Gunnar Henderson sucks again, I'm just gonna cry and never draft Orioles ever again. Speaking of, I don't even know. I didn't have a good transfer, but we're moving on to number 17. Dylan Digler, 126 games last year, 13 home runs. He had 278. You have rejected for 15 home runs, 51, 56, and a 251 average. The average last year did come on a 345 BABIP, so 278 maybe coming down. But what's your thoughts on Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Digler is if you take his name away, I feel like every year there's a catcher who comes out of nowhere to have like a top 15 catcher year and then just disappears. And Dylan Digler last year was that guy. And I don't know. I mean, that, doesn't bode well for this year, obviously. But, I mean, he looks like he has 15 to 17 homer power and doesn't look that awful on average, maybe like a 250 average. So, yeah, I mean, 15 to 17 homers and a 250 average gets you, roughly around here in the draft. I mean, for the overall, in the overall big picture here, we're after 300 overall in my rankings. This is after, this is no longer 12-team mixed leagues. This is, beyond that. So, yeah, I mean, this is like you're at the point where you should just take a flyer on a catcher who's, happens to be starting. Dylan Digler's your man.
Yeah, I don't actually hate him this year, Gray. I could see myself ending up with him as a second catcher in some leagues. So he should have playing time. And while it's not an overly exciting profile, I do think like he's just going to give you what he's going to give you. And there's still a little bit upside. He's still, kind of, well, I can say young, 27 as a first year or second year in the league is not young, but it's young in regards to how much time he spent in the majors. Moving on to number 18, continuing with the prospects, Moises Ballesteros. Last year in 20 games in the majors, had 2 home runs and hit 298. In AAA, he had 114 games where he had 13 home runs, 5 stolen bases, and hit 316, 385, and 473. You're projected for 14 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 47, 51, and 277 average. What are your thoughts on Ballesteros?
I really like him a lot. I just wish the Cubs had fewer catchers. I mean, I know Carson Kelly had a pretty good year last year, actually, but I know he's not like the future of the franchise. And Miguel Amaya didn't seem like the future. I mean, he seemed like he was supposed to be the future of the franchise, but that didn't really pan out. But he's still there. So, trying to squeeze DH at bats when you have, they just went out and they got Bregman, so that pushed Matt Shaw to the bench. So Moises being at DH is good in a way, but it's also a pretty crowded field who's going to be vying for DH at bats, and their catcher slot is kind of already taken by 2 other guys. So I feel like Ballesteros has to get DH at bats, and there's a bunch of guys vying for DH at bats. So that kind of hurts him a bit. So I like Moises Ballesteros a lot. I just don't know if the at bats are going to be there. That's kind of my biggest problem with him. Again, I'm totally happy to draft him if if you're in a league where it's deep enough and you want to take a flyer on a guy, sort of my biggest, like I mentioned earlier with Kyle Teal and Francisco Alvarez and Basalio, which I'm totally saying correctly. I think their at bats are a little bit more secure, so I put them in a 12-team mixed league flyer range. Like those guys, I could see taking a flyer on in a 12-team mixed league. Now we're in a range where these are not 12-team mixed league guys, and Ballesteros is a good flyer for like a 15-team mixed league. It's a totally fine flyer to take. I just feel like his at bats could be a little bit more limited, which worries me a bit.
Yeah, they definitely could. Like you said, the Cubs recently signed Bregman. That means Matt Shaw's now on the bench or filling up the platoon with Ballesteros. So it's not a great place for him to be. I do think if I'm just looking at taking a shot on a catcher in, say, a 12-team, one catcher, and you can go out and find catchers on the waiver wire type of league, like I would rather have him than Kyle Teal just because I feel like the upside is higher. But if you're actually having to start them and there's not going to be options out in a two-catcher league or a deeper league, then Ballesteros does drop down pretty much where you have him, or maybe even further if we get news in spring that he's definitely platooning or that there's something going on.
Yeah, and also Ballesteros, I'm saying he's not a 12-team mixed league catcher coming out of a draft for me at least, but that doesn't mean if I draft, I don't know, say I draft Kyle Teal and he has a bad first week, I could pick up Ballesteros like almost immediately in April. Like I have no problem. Like Ballesteros could be a top 12 catcher and I might pick him up almost immediately once the season starts, but I just don't have him ranked in a place where he would be, necessarily a top 12 catcher for me, coming out of the draft at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to number 19, J.T. Realmuto, former number one catcher, last year in 134 games, 12 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 57, 52. He hit 257, 315, and 384. The projected for 11 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 51, 50, and 244. This is the first time he's had a single-digit home run to fly ball rate in his career. It just feels like, he's solid for real baseball, but his use in our game may be coming to an end.
Yeah, no, completely. I just looked up because of, you were reading off his stats from last year, 12 homers, 8 steals, 257 average. And I just realized that he was actually way more valuable than Adley Rutschman. like a lot more. Like 12, 8, 257 is excellent compared to what Adley Rutschman did last year. Anyway, that just came to me. Yeah, I don't expect Realmuto to be, great or even bounce back really. It's just going to be a slow fade for him to get to, to retirement at this point. Maybe 15 homers and 10 steals and a 245 average, maybe, for if he got lucky, if he got lucky on power and if he decided to steal a few more bags. But yeah, it's not a great bet as a 30, going to be 35 this year. It's not a great bet. So yeah, I mean, I have no problem drafting him if you're in a 2-catcher league and you've, punted catcher by a lot and you're like, I need someone who's starting, because he will, the Phillies will play him as many games as he can get out there and play, usually around 135 games, that is. So yeah, I think he's fine for what he is. I just wouldn't expect more.
Yeah, I completely agree. The bat speed is slowing. Average bat speed dropped over a mile per hour last year. Fast swing rate dropped over 9%. So these are not numbers that are great trends for people in their mid-30s, especially at catcher. But he's great defensively, so good for the Phillies. And like you said, if you're just needing somebody that's going to play, he's going to play, and he's not the worst. He's not terrible. He's just not going to do. There's no upside what to speak of. Moving on to number 20, Austin Wells. Last year in 126 games, 21 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 51, 71. He hit 219, 275, and 436. You're projected for 19 home runs, 4 stolen bases, 53, 66, and a 227 average. What are your thoughts on Austin Wells here, Greg?
My thoughts are he hits the ball in the air a lot, which is good for power, but terrible for everything else. So yeah, I mean he's good for a ton of 380 foot outs or 383 foot homers. That's Austin Wells basically. So he's fine for power and not much else.
Yeah, if you're going to hit 50% or more fly balls, you better hit them real hard. And he just he doesn't, Gray. That's not his bag, baby. Moving on to 21, Alejandro Kirk. 130 games last year, 15 home runs, a stolen base, 45, 76. He hit 282, 348, and 421. You're projected for 13 home runs, 42 runs, 63 RBIs, and a 271 average. Gray, he hit 15 home runs in his best offensive season of his career. Yep, we're in that section.
Yeah, moving on. Austin Wells. If Austin Wells and Alejandro Kirk had a baby, that would be a really good hitter, because that would be like the perfect launch angle and fly balls from Austin Wells and the perfect hard hit from Alejandro Kirk, because Alejandro Kirk is like, he's a Statcast darling. You look up Statcast for catchers and you're like, wow, Alejandro Kirk is really good. And then you look at his end of the year stats and you're like, maybe he hits 12 homers and 275. I mean, maybe. Yeah. I mean, he should play. He's also going to challenge Sal Perez for the lowest runs for a guy with 150 games played. Yeah, Kirk is fine for batting average. Not much else.
Yeah, he's on the list with like Yandy Diaz and I don't know, Teoscar Hernandez for just constantly underperforming their batted ball numbers. That's definitely Alejandro Kirk, unfortunately. Moving on to 22, Gabriel Moreno. Last year in 83 games, had 9 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 44, 40. He hit 285, 253, and 433. Year projected for 10 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 48, 52, and a 281 average. Gabriel Moreno had, I guess, a bit of a bounce back season after what was a pretty terrible 2024. But still, 9 home runs in 285 average is not killing it, Gray.
No, not exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's a way to look at Moreno's numbers, and you could get excited. It's, I mean, it takes a little bit of a galaxy brain to get there. But you can see how the launch angle up, the ground balls down, the hard hit up, the 9 homers in half a season while hitting 285. You could see a path to a 17 homer 280 season potentially, possibly. I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch, but he's currently it looks like he could hit cleanup potentially, I guess. It's to be determined, obviously, but yeah, I mean, there could be a path here for him. I think probably was said about him for the last 3 years. So, he hasn't gone down that path. Alejandro Kirk, take your StatCast sliders and make like a little breadcrumb path for Gabriel Moreno to go down that path and maybe get a little bit better of a launch angle potentially. And, let's see. Let's go, Gabriel Moreno. Take off, baby.
Take off and give us 15 home runs. Let's go. All right, great. We're pretty far into this show. I wanted to talk about this tier in a little bit more detail, but we've run. So I'm just going to run through the names here, and then let's kind of talk about them, and then we'll maybe pick, a couple from even below this list that we're looking if you're in deep leagues or only leagues. At number 23 is Tyler Stevenson. Number 24, Carlos Narvaez. Number 25, Edgar Quero. Number 26, Bo Naylor. Number 27, Ryan Jeffers. And number 28, Sean Murphy. Let's talk about a few of these guys real quick, Gray.
Edgar Quero was a guy who actually I just drafted in my first 2026 fantasy draft in a draft champions league, 2-catcher league. I just drafted Edgar Quero. And now that I look at what I projected him for, I have no idea why I drafted him. He's awful. He's awful. He's terrible. But honestly, I think that actually is a good point to make for catchers in general, because Quero is a catcher. I hope.
Yes.
And he has a more or less an everyday starting job. And in a 2-catcher league, it's all that matters. If you were to listen to our catcher podcast from last year, I'm sure I said similar things about Hunter Goodman. It doesn't matter. I mean, at a certain point, when you're in a 2-catcher league, it doesn't matter who your second catcher is, as long as they get at bats. Just try and get as many at bats as you can. And Edgar Quero should do that potentially. He should have at bats. So he might hit 260. So there's not a ton else to say about that tier of guys that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, we're kind of into it at this point. I mean, Tyler Stevenson's good when he's healthy. He's just never healthy. Bo Naylor hits straight moon balls into the sky, and some of them clear the fence, and the rest find gloves in the infield. Sean Murphy, we thought he was back, and then he told us he was not in the second half. That was horrendous. Another just absolute tragedy at second half. I often joke, Gray, that the best way to figure out what catchers you want for the second half is just to look at the first half and see who did well or who did poorly, because if they did well, you don't want them for the second half usually. And that's played out in a few of the guys we've talked about. Anybody else on this list, anybody can go catch the rest of your catcher rankings if they want the rest of the information or names. But anybody you want to call out here that's maybe interesting?
I don't know. I mean, maybe I might be too low on Carter Jensen. I got to see honestly, I think in spring training, it's going to tell me more about like what the Royals plan is for him, because I'm not really sure, to be totally honest. I have Carter Jensen buried in my rankings. He's going a fair bit higher in ADP. He's going I think he's going in like the 210 overall range. I have him ranked like around 400. I have him really buried because I just didn't know what his at bats are going to be. Because if he's got like 300 or fewer at bats, it's basically useless. I mean, in a 2-catcher league, it's fine to take that flyer for a second catcher just to see if maybe you luck into like a top 15 to 20 catcher. But in a 12-team mixed league, in a 1-catcher league, you can't deal with a Carter Jensen if he's not playing every day. So I don't think he's a 12-team mixed league catcher. So I have him buried in my rankings. But in spring training, The reason why people are still listening to a catcher podcast almost 2 hours in, if the reason why we're doing these podcasts 2 a week for the positions is so we can discuss more during the spring training. So we could get to spring training, and I might move Carter Jensen up if I see the at bats are there, and I like the flyer on them if the at bats are there. I just don't know if they are or not. So we'll see. That's one guy who I definitely debated on whether or not to move him up or not. So yeah, anything. Dalton Rushing maybe if he has at bats, but I doubt it because Will Smith is pretty much planted in front of him.
Yeah, I don't see that changing. And Miami already has 4 catchers on the lineup, but if Joe Mack happens to make the roster, he could be potentially interesting as a flyer catcher in NL only. But that's a ways away. But then again, this time last year, we didn't think Augustin Ramirez really had a chance at making the lineup, and that ended up okay. So just a name to kind of file away if we start hearing things in spring training. Gray, this was a lot more talk about catchers than I ever want to do. Yeah, we do it every single year because it's our first positional preview, and we have to get through so many names. We will get better about the time. But hey, if you have any specific questions, you can find us on X. I am at RazBdon. Gray is the owner of the at Razzball account. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast or on youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. See you later, Gray.
All right, Lates.
Hoosiers.
Hoosiers. Oh, I should have worn my Hoosier shirt. Oh.